hide a security bug, it's I'm trying to ship a product. It may unfortunately turn into both at the same time. The last part of this, to your point about game theory, is I actually think the research community and the vendor lose both when a security bug is found. Because, and I say that for the following reasons, the goodness of finding it is typically exploited before the fixes are coming out. So we're losing one of the goals of first principles, which was I'm just trying to make the internet better. The second is that no matter which way we look at it, the customer of the research and combined vendor community lose because they're the ones that get exploited. And that leads me to the final point, which was you brought up. There's difference between research and use of research, and that's why research and applied research are different. Research to me is good in this world. Applied research done for bad is criminal.
I think the complicated thing about motivations is that huge companies are not monoliths. And one of the things we run into is you can greatly overestimate the importance of a security team or even a CSO inside the organization. Because at most organizations I've seen, the CSO is less important than like a VP of a product line. Because that VP has a P and an L, and the CSO only has an L, right? And so if you start dealing with good intentions with the security team, you can go down this 6-month path where in the last week, when the New York Times story is written and the chief marketing officer gets it and takes it over to the VP of that product who is getting bonused based upon hitting ship dates and shipping number of units and certain press metrics, all of a sudden they call out the legal dogs without the good-natured people in the security team who know that that's a bad idea. They're the ones who call it the legal dogs, and that's happened to us a couple of times. And fortunately, it's never gotten to the point of where it's out of control. But I think that's the real problem with big companies. Is I think for Microsoft or Cisco, they're at the point where you have high enough people that understand you let your security team deal with it. But at a lot of companies, there's a really good, well-meaning security team that when it actually hits the fan, they have no control over how the organization responds. And instantly, executives of a certain level always start with their lawyers because their lawyers are part of any discussion, and a lawyer sees they have a hammer called a lawsuit or a temporary restraining order, and everything's a nail. And and if you've got a partner from Bingham, and you're not going to bang on Bingham too much, but if you got a partner from Bingham sitting in your room with your CEO in this discussion, the Bingham partner is going to say these are our options, and every single option is going to include legal action. There's not going to be an option of let's just live with it.
So the good news is there's a case study of how well that goes. So we've at least set a precedent by which to learn from.
No, 5 minutes. Yeah.
All right, there's another question, sir.
So I'll skip the long-winded explanation of why I'm asking the question. I'm going to get it immediately. Government frequently tries to communicate, especially U.S. government, sorry for the foreign folks. Government tries to communicate through the RFI, RFP process. How effective is that in communicating research to you? And what should be done instead?
So the question is, how effective is the procurement? Okay.
So I misunderstood your question initially. So essentially, is the RFI, RFP process actually indicating early indicators to vendors, hey, this is what we need next, now, new, whatever? To my mind, no. I think the better way, and again, somewhat US-centric, though this is not completely a US-centric problem. Mm-hmm. Bluntly, there is no unified security research agenda for the United States of America. There is highly duplicative research agendas by various organizations that the United States government sponsors. There is highly confusing, contradictory research agendas, of which, by the way, we're being asked as vendors sometimes to participate in. And in fact, ironically, then point out the fact that one group's not talking to the other clearly because they're asking for the exactly opposite things or the exactly duplicate things. If that were to actually change, I think you would find a significantly better place, to me. That would be how the early indicators of what do we need, what do we want, would end up coming to a vendor a little more clearly, at least to my mind. You might have a different opinion.
Well, I think the acquisition RFI RFP process is I think just a small fraction, and not really the right way to go to do this. I do believe that the open indicators of what some of the standards need to be to get open dialogue and discussion is the right way to go. And I think there's been great progress at times made. You know, when we establish, you know, I remember in the 1990s, let's put out a high-performance, high-speed security standard and let everybody go after it. Or, you know, we can all think in this room about all these different standards and that could, in fact, generate a lot of research dialogue. I think that's the right way to really get energy going. I also recall an example where under the CNCI, the Cyber Initiative, there's a lot of focus on leap ahead technologies. And we put together a large group. I don't know if it was well recognized around, so everybody had a chance to participate. It probably was a little bit too controlling in its process. But what I found very interesting about that leap ahead process was it went out and said, we want all these great papers and research ideas on how to move the ball forward. At the end of the day, the consensus of the group, after looking at this problem for a good year, there was no research leap ahead ideas at all out there. Okay? But the good news is there was an attempt to try to generate that discussion and not using RFPs and RFI processes to get dialogue going. So I think there's a happy medium there, but we get to do a much better job at trying to generate, you know, those kind of things.
We've got about 2 minutes remaining, so if there's no additional quick question, oh, there's one question way in the back there. Ma'am? So how would the conversation alter if there?
Law has a default position that said software or any code shift, any product code shift must be reasonably safe.
Reasonably safe standards of software.
I think that'd be the end of the software industry. Newsflash: software engineering is not really engineering, right?
Right.
I call myself an engineer, but I don't build it like, you know. If bridges were built like software, we'd all be dead in this room, right? So, I think honestly, a rule like that, while some people push for it, I think that's just going to be a class action lawyer, Full Employment Act of 2012, right? It's not going to really have anything to do with, because there's no way to define that. And realistically, software is way more, Windows is way more complex than the Space Shuttle, and you can't fix it.
Quick comment from our Microsoft colleague, then we'll be.
So back to the game theory, I think about it differently. I think about this as the theory of constraints. And that is that, we've got a problem, we end up with a dilemma, and the reason we haven't solved that yet is we haven't applied enough creativity to that problem yet. There is a solution, you just need to come back to it. So I think that if you apply theory of constraints, that the suggestion about some legislation that says reasonable, I think that that may be a suggestion that moves it forward a little bit, but that clearly isn't going to be a solution to the dilemma that we're talking about here.
With that, we're going to bring this session to an end. I want to thank the panelists for an outstanding job of presenting their information.